Great, thanks, Katie. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Microsoft Lists, Formatting and Automate. This is actually part 2 of a session that I did earlier this year. I did an introduction to Microsoft Lists where I demonstrated basically how to create a list and some of the general features. And this is just taking it one step further, and I'm going to be showing you some different formatting options as well as some automation that you can do. So we're going to be looking at how to rename columns. We're going to be looking at something called alternating row styles, conditional formatting, something called the card designer, and then finally how to create rules for automating your lists. So in order to show you all that, I want to have a list available. And what I did is you would have been sent an Excel spreadsheet called case management. So this is just a sample file that I'm going to first of all show you how to import into lists. And that way we'll have a file that we can work with and format. So where I am right now is I'm just in a channel that I've created called Microsoft Lists Training. And the first thing I need to do is set up Microsoft Lists. So I'm going to go within my general channel. I'm just going up here at the top where the plus sign is, and I'm going to click on that, and this gives me a list of apps. Now, because I have used lists recently, it's in my recent list, but if you didn't see it and you don't have lists already added, you can, basically you can type in the word lists at the top here in the search box, and there you can see it comes up. So I'm going to add the lists tab, and then basically this comes up. I click save to finish adding lists to my channel. And now I have two options of either creating a list or adding to an existing one. I'm going to choose create a list. And then from here, if I was creating a list from scratch, I could choose from any one of these templates, but I'm creating a list from my Excel spreadsheet. So I'm going to click right here where it says from Excel. And then I'm going to click upload file. That's going to allow me to upload the file from my workstation. And this is the file I'm going to upload called case management. And when I click open, you will now see it brings up, it basically looks at the first sheet of the file, and it's created a table. And you can see it's given me all the columns of information. The only thing I need to fix here is because it had a due date column, the due date has come in with the serial number as opposed to the date format. So you can see here it says number. I'm going to click here where it says number and change it to date and time. And now it will show the date and time. So it's basically got 4 columns of information, and then there's a status column that is currently empty. And notice that here the headings are identified already. The first column is item, case, due date, assigned, and status. So now when I click next, it now wants to know what I want to name it. And I'm just going to shorten this name so it's called case management. I can type in an optional description if I like. I can pick a color. I'm going to go with blue, and I can choose an icon. And then I'm going to click create. And now it's creating my list. And now you can see I have a tab called case management, and here is the information that has been imported. So the first thing we're going to look at is some different things that we can do in terms of formatting this view. And one of the things I want you to notice is that the first column was called item, as I pointed out when we were first importing it, but now that it's been imported, it's called title. And that's because the default column is always going to be title in your Microsoft lists. And you might not want the name title to be there, so it's easy enough to rename it. So this information is in your handout. It's on the first page. So the first thing I'm going to do to rename it is I'm going to click the arrow, the small drop-down arrow that is to the right of the column name. So where it shows title, I'm going to click that arrow, and I'm going to choose column settings followed by rename. This is going to open up the rename dialog box, and I can give it a name, the desired name, in which I want to call it item instead, and then I'm going to click save. And now you can see it's been changed to the word item. Now I think in the handout I called it task, so if I want to try renaming that again I can go to column settings and rename, and now, so at any point I can rename that column or any of the other columns. Now, the next thing I may want to do is format the layout. And I'm going to have you, so we're still in my list here. And now I'm going to go to the right side over here where I see the words all items. And when I hover on that, you can see it actually pops up and it says switch view options. So this is going to allow us to control what our view is. And when I click this drop down, you can see that right now what is selected is the layout that is selected is the list layout. And I'm going to go, I can either go with list or I can go with gallery. So right now it's set for list. If I choose gallery, you can see it shows my items as cards. So I'm going to go back and choose list again. The other option in there is compact list. If you take a look as I'm changing it, when it's the list view, the information is spread out more. And when I choose compact list, it changes the vertical spacing. So I'm going to leave it now at list. So I'm going to go back and choose list. And then again, I'm going to click the drop down and I'm going to go where it says format current view. Now, once I have the current view chosen, you can see right here the words choose layout, and it's got list and it's also got gallery. So I could, if I didn't remember to switch the view before I got into this, I could switch the layout option if I wanted to. And when you are in list mode, so when I've got it set for list, you can see I've got two choices of alternating row styles and conditional formatting. If I change the layout from list to gallery, I only have the card designer. So I'm going to go back to the list view. And now I'm going to have a look at the alternating row styles options. So the alternating row styles is going to, by default, if it's turned on, it's going to display the rows with a gray and white color for alternate rows. So if I click right here where it says edit row styles, you can see there it's alternated. So I've got alternating gray and white. So it makes it a little bit easier, especially if your list is quite large. It makes it easier if it has this alternating row style. So just easier to read the information. Now, if I want something other than the default, I can now go to the more styles option, which is this little option right here. If I hover on that, that's going to allow me to actually modify the odd rows. So the odd rows are the gray. So if I click this little arrow, it's going to pop up. It gives me, first of all, just some options for different colors. So I'm going to choose blue instead. You can see now it's alternating in blue. If I click this arrow again, I could choose. So you see all I can do here initially is just choose what colors I want it to alternate in. And if I wanted the even rows to be a color as well, I could go in there and I could pick, obviously it should pick a different color, and there you can see it's alternating that way. So it just depends on what your preference is. And if I put it back to automatic, that just puts it back to the white option that was there. And then again, I'm going to go up to where I've got the odd rows. I'm going to click the symbol there, and then I'm going to choose more styles, which gives me all of my options. So I can choose to have the text bold. I can change the text color here to a different color. I can also change the fill color. So you can see I'm just making different options there. I can put a border around it. So you can see now there's a border around the shaded area. I could just have a top and bottom border instead of it being all the way around. I can have a left border, a left and right border, or just a right border. And then I've got border style options as well. I could have dotted lines around it. So you've got quite a few different options here. I can change the color of the border. And essentially, once I've made my change, all I have to do is click save, and then close, and that will have kept the options that I had there. If I want to make changes again, all I have to do is go back up here to the arrow beside all items, and then back to Format Current View. And then you can see there's the check mark here beside alternating row styles to show you what I've got selected. And now if I click Edit Row Styles, I can go back and make more changes. So it'll maintain those options until I go in and make additional options. Okay, and then I'm just going to close that. So that is the alternating row styles. And again, that is only available if you're in list view. If I was in the gallery view and went into Format Current View, I would only have the card designer available. So if I got this far and I realized, oh, I don't want the card designer, I could click now on gallery and put it back to list. Okay, and so now what we're going to look at is, so we've seen the alternating row styles. If I decide I don't want the alternating row styles anymore, I can just uncheck this little checkbox, and that would just put it back to the way it was. And now we'll have a look at conditional formatting. So the conditional formatting can be used to let me know, say, when a due date is coming up, or maybe I can want a particular field to appear in a specific format. So when I go now to conditional formatting, you'll see conditional formatting right now, it's showing all of the values as gray, but now I'm going to click Add Rule, and then we've got sort of an area that we can now build what we want to have as our rule. So I'm going to click here where it says choose a column, and I'm going to choose due date. And then you can see the dates that I have. So I've got the 15th, the 10th, I've got the 30th, and then I've got December. So for the comparison here, I can click where it says choose or type of value. I'm going to click in there. Actually, sorry, I'm going to click the drop down now beside show a comparison. So I'm going to choose is after as an example. And then I'm going to click on this calendar, and I'm going to choose a specific date, and I'm going to go down and I'm going to choose December 1st. So this means that, and you can see it's already done. So it's already highlighted the item that is due after December 1st. And it's showing it as blue text because that's what's specified. If I want it to show differently, I could click this icon to the right of the sample text, and then that will let me choose what I want it as the fill. So I'm going to go to red instead, and you can see it's now identified that being the date after December 1st. If I choose save and close, now that criteria is displayed. So I don't actually see what the criteria is until I go back to the Format Current View. And then if I go to Manage Rules here, I will see what the rule is. So if the due date is after December 1st, it's going to be in red. Now I can have more than one rule applied. So I'm going to click now on Add Rule. And now I'm going to have a different rule now, still for the due date, but now I'm going to indicate that if it's before and then a specific date. So now I'm going to say that if it's before December 1st, and again, the default there is green, I can click in there, pick a different color, and now you can see anything before December 1st is in blue. And if I want to clear those, I can go back to this all items, back to Format Current View, and then all I would do is uncheck the conditional formatting and save, and now it's taken off. If I went back, it's right. So as soon as you take it off, then the rules are removed. So now, just as another example now, I'm going to go to add a rule, and this time the column I'm going to choose is the case column. And I'm going to, for the comparison, I'm going to choose is equal to, and now I can either choose or type a value. So in this case, I'm going to type in a value, and I'm going to say Bird versus Stewart. And then I'm going to choose sample text, and there you can see it now highlights those two. And again, I can choose save and then close, and now the formatting has been applied there. So fairly simple to do. It's just a matter again of going into the current view, and then as long as it's still on, I can go back to manage rules and I can add additional views. And if I go back to format the view, if I uncheck that, that's what takes it off, and that's what also will remove all of the conditions. So that's how easy it is to clear it after the fact. Now, everything that I'm doing right now is related to the whole view. And I just want you to see now what happens if I go to a specific column. So for example, now if I go just to the case column and click the drop down and go to column settings and then choose format this column, you can see I can also do conditional formatting just within the column. So if I now choose conditional formatting again, and here it gives me a chance to choose the formatting first. So I'm going to choose that I want it to be in blue. And now I'm going to add my rule. And again, I'm choosing the case one. My comparison will be equal to. So I'm going to use the same rule that I just finished using. So Bird versus Stewart. But now when I save it, you can see, oh, something happened, sorry. Let's go back there. Let me clear that one. Okay, so I've said if the case is equal to Bird versus Stewart, put it in red. Just make sure that I have typed that correctly. Now, I think that I have found sometimes the rule doesn't come in right away. Let me just change my view. I'm going to switch to gallery view. There we go. So now that I've gone to gallery, you can see it's only highlighted the case. And if I go back to list, now it's worked. So it just needed a minute to refresh itself, but you can see the difference is it only highlights the information in the column instead of highlighting the entire row. Now I'll just show you that again. So I'm going to the arrow beside case, going to column settings. I'm going to format this column and I'm going to remove the format that I have there. And now I'm going to go back to manage rules. This time I'm going to change the color to blue, and I'm actually going to delete this rule. So I'm going to make sure it's still case equal to, and this time I'm going to put in Jeffrey Quinn. I'm going to leave it at blue. I'm going to choose save and close. So it hasn't changed, but as soon as I go to gallery and come back, it didn't refresh. Okay. Did I spell Jeffrey correct? Yes, I did. Oh, you know what I did? Is I missed an N. So you see, it didn't pick it up because I missed one letter. Okay, and then again, I think I need to go out and come back in. No, still not doing it. Okay, so when I edited that, okay, there we go. Okay, so this time I didn't have to switch views, it did highlight it. So just watch for that. If it doesn't highlight it right away, switch views and then it should update. So again, the difference there is when I go over to all items and choose format current view, that's going to affect the entire row. Whereas if you just go to the individual column and do the format column, whatever conditional formatting you do there will only highlight the individual items within the column. Now, depending on what kind of information is in the column, you might have other options. So I want you to see what happens if I go to column settings on the due date and choose format this column. Notice I do have the conditional formatting option here, but I also have an option to format the dates. So that's because I have dates in this column. So I just want you to see what happens here, because one of the things that I noticed is when I imported the date, it gave me the date, but it also gave me the time. And I'll actually just widen this. And you can see it defaulted to 12 o'clock a.m., which I don't really want the time to display. I only want the date to display. So if I click here on Edit Styles, you can see, sorry, I just went to the wrong spot. I wanted to actually just click. No, you know what, I've chosen the wrong thing. So when I went in, instead of going to format this column, that gives me, I'll show you that again. So format columns and format dates, that lets me pick different colors for different dates. So I could have yellow for before today, I could have green for if it was today, and if it was after today, I could have red. So that's the default setting that is useful for actually formatting the dates and instead of setting up a separate rule, it just lets me apply this. But that actually wasn't what I was looking for yet. What I was looking for was the ability to change the date, which I have to go to edit for. So if I go to column settings and then go to edit, here you see your date format, and you can see here it's including the time. So I'm going to uncheck yes and click save. And now you can see it's removed the time, but it's also changed the way that the date displays. So November 30th and December 31st still display as a date, but these other ones, because the time is coming up closer, it actually says it's due tomorrow or 6 days from now. So it gives us a little bit more, it's called the friendly format. So if I go back to the drop down, if I go to column settings again and go to edit, here you can see it says friendly format. So if I take the friendly format off and click save, now you can see it gives the date the way I wanted it. So it gives me the date in the format that I want, but it's dropped the time off. So that information is not in your handout, and it was something I forgot to include. So I will be updating the handout and sending it to Terry. So she'll send out an updated one, because all I've shown in the handout is going to column settings and the format option. And I realized that when I was working through this, that I wanted to also make sure that you knew how to change the date format. We did cover that in the I think we would have covered it in the first session, but just to make sure you have that information, I will send an updated handout. Because again, it's nice to be able to, especially if you are using dates, to be able to control whether the time shows and whether or not you want that friendly format. So again, without the friendly format, it shows in a numerical format, but if we turn that on, then we see it a little bit more user-friendly. Okay, so now I'd like to show you the card designer. So I'm going to go back up here to all items, and I'm going to go to format current view, and I'm now going to change the layout from list to gallery. So I've just clicked here under choose layout, and I've changed it to gallery. And so the gallery view now shows, you can see the rule that I applied is still showing up here, and you can see it shows it in a card view. And on the right side now, you can see we have the card designer available, and there is an option here that I can click on that says edit card. So if I choose that, it gives me a panel now that shows me what fields are going to display on the card. So I haven't actually filled in anything yet for the status, so maybe I don't want the status to display. So if I uncheck the status option, you can see it goes away, so it doesn't display anymore. And if I didn't want to see who it was assigned to, I could uncheck the assigned to option, although that would be more user friendly to have that turned on. So you basically can just choose what options you want to display here. And then you'll also notice at the bottom, there is an option that says show column names as labels. So if you felt that they didn't need these labels, like I didn't need it to say task or case or due date or assigned. So if the information was pretty easy to tell what was being displayed without the column names showing, I could uncheck this option. And that way the card is smaller and basically I can tell there's the task name, there's the case, there's the date, and there's who it's assigned to. So it allows you to have more space. It makes the card smaller. So it's just if you're wanting it to save a little bit of space. And then again, if I want to put the labels back on, I can check that option and that will be available. Okay, and then I can just click save. And now my card displays. I save and close, and then now my cards display as I've specified. Now, I didn't show you how we could modify the status field, so I just want to go back to the actually, sorry, I'm going to go back to the format view. I'm going to go back to the card. I'm going to put the status back on. So right now the status is blank. And I'm going to go back to my format current view. I'm going to change the layout back to list. And actually what I want to show you is more specific to the status column. So I'm just going to close from here. And now when I go to the status column, I'm going to go to column settings and format this column. So because the status is something a little bit different, you can see there's some data bars here and there's some conditional formatting. So because this is actually, there's no information in just yet, so it's thinking I might want to use data bars, but I'm going to go back up to status and I'm actually going to go to column settings again, and now I'm going to choose edit. Because what I want to be able to do is I don't want it to be a number, so that's why the data bar options was showing. Instead of it being a number, I want it to actually be a choice. And when I change it to choice, again, this would have shown you this in the first session, but I'm just going to make the choices now be not started and in progress and completed. And then where it's got default value, I'm going to click here and I'm going to choose not started. So that means if I added a new item, it would automatically come in as not started. So now when I click save, I'm going to click save again to save the changes. And now if I'm going to double click on this one to actually open it up, and there you can see where it shows the status. It says select an option. I can click in there and I have my choices. So I'm going to change that to not started. And I'm going to go back to my list. I'm going to change this one to not started. So I'm going to make each one of these. So normally this would have, if this had been set up initially, the not started would have come in as default. And so again, if I ended up adding any more, not started would be the option. But now I don't like how this displays. So when I go back up to this arrow and now go to column settings and format this column, now because this is set up with choices, I have another option here. I have this option called choice pills. So what I'm wanting to just point out to you is that depending on the data that's in the column or what type of data, so if it's set for a number or if it's set for choices, you will end up getting additional options over here. So because I have made this a choice column, I have these choice pills available. So I'm going to click here on edit styles, and what I can do, you can see it already has assigned a default now for not started, in progress, and completed. and I could choose to change the colors, or I could just leave it as is. So if I click on this icon to the right of the one for not started, I could pick a different color to indicate that it wasn't started if I didn't want the blue as a default. So if I wanted it to be, say I want that one to be yellow, and then maybe the red one I want, or the completed one I want to be red, or so it's kind of a, I'll go to a brighter red. So I've got the option picking what color I want for those. And you can see it's just a little bit more noticeable now when I change my status. So if I went in here now and indicated that this was completed, now that's how it would show up. And if I went back to my gallery view and then went to format the gallery view and went into my card designer, now you can actually see the status is showing, but if I don't want the label to show, again, I could just uncheck the show column labels, and now it's clear that it's basically the status is clear. I don't need it to say the word status. It's clear by the choice pills that have been added. So that's another format feature that I have available to me, provided I have used, if I provided I've set up the column as the type of, as set up as choice. Okay, so from here now I'm going to change my view back to list. And now the other feature I want to show you, and I'll just get you to notice that at the top of my screen here, I now have edit and grid view available. I'm actually going to click on that. So it just goes back to showing me my grid. Actually, so, and then I'm going to exit it. So what I want you to see now at the top is it's got edit and grid view, share, and integrate. And what I want you to see now is how we can create rules that we can automate our list. So once your list is created and you've modified it, the format the way you want, you can add rules that will automate certain tasks. And one task you might want is, if this is a list that people are sharing, I might want to get notified when somebody makes a change, because otherwise I won't notice that the change has been made. So if somebody goes and changes the status of one of these tasks to being completed, I might want to be made aware of that. So essentially what the automation is a condition that will trigger the rule that is set up and then the action that the rule will take. Now, in order to do this, you need to be able to choose an automate option. And I can see at the top of my screen, I don't see automate. I just see the word integrate. Now, depending on how your list, your Microsoft Teams is set up, or what type of team is set up, or what your administration rights are, you may or may not have the automate feature there. Now, I know I used to have the automate feature there, and now I don't see it, but there is a way, if it's not displayed, how you can get it to, how you can actually do the automation is to actually open up your list in SharePoint. And you do that by going to these three dots over here on the right. So I'm going to click the three dots, and then you can see there's a choice to open in SharePoint. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that. And now it's opening up my list in SharePoint. And now you can see up here at the top, in between export and integrate, I have the automate option available. So now I'm going to click automate, and I'm going to choose rules. And when I choose rules, I have two choices of either creating a rule or managing a rule. So I'm going to start with create a rule. And what comes up, there are 4 different categories of rules you can create. And when I was doing some research on this, I found that apparently there's going to be more types of rules made available in the future in Teams. Right now, these are the only 4 that you can set up. So you can set up a rule for if a column changes, and that would be sort of if the formatting changes, or if the column width changes, or just basically the format or the structure of it. If the actual value changes, you can have a rule for that. You can have a rule if a new item is created, and then finally you can have a rule if an item is deleted. So you basically choose what it is you're looking for. So I want to show you the example of if a value changes. So I'm going to click right here where it says a column value changes. And then it gives me sort of a way of now knowing how to build it. So I've got these hyperlinks for each piece that I want to do. So where it says when, I can choose what column I'm looking for to change. So if I click on choose a column, I'm going to choose status. And then the condition will be, I'm going to click on choose a condition, and I'm going to basically say is not. And then I'm going to click on value, and you can see there's the 3 values that were specified in that column. So the default value is not started. So I essentially want to know when somebody indicates that it's in progress or when it's completed. So by saying when status is not, I'm just choosing not started. So if I say when status is not started, basically then it means it's either in progress or it's completed. And then I need to indicate what I want to have happen. So I want an email sent to me. So I'm going to click right here where it says enter a name or email address, and I'm going to choose me. And now when I click create, you can see here's the rule available. So that means now when the status is not started, it will send an email to me. And I've given you an illustration on the last page of your handout that shows you what it looks like. So as soon as the status gets changed, an email does get sent, and that's what shows up in the email. So basically the notification tells you who made the change and what they changed it to. So you can see in the sample, it says that I changed the status to in progress for the initial client interview. So it actually tells you which task got changed as well. So it's quite powerful in that it just lets you know, that way you don't have to check the list. It will actually show you that it's changed. Now I just closed the rules there. And if I wanted to be able to see which rules were there, I can go back to automate, back to rules, and back to manage rules. And there it shows the one that's in place. So if I wanted to create another rule, just have a look at the items here. If I maybe wanted to be notified of maybe if a task is added, I could go back to automate, go back to rules, and now I'm going to create another rule. And so this one would be a new item is created. So again, when a new item is created, that comes in automatically, send email to, and then all I would do is choose me. And so now as soon as a new item is added, I'm also going to get a notification. And then I'm just clicking here at the bottom where it says create rule, and now I have 2 rules. So both of the rules will be in place, and I'll get emails on either one of those. And you can see I have up to 15 rules that I can create. And then you can see now I also have the option of, right now the rules are on. If I wanted to leave the rule in place, but I just didn't want to run it at this point, I could turn the particular rule off just by clicking the button. And then I can turn it back on again by clicking it again. So I can just keep creating different rules up to 15. And then once I've got 15, then I'd have to remove one of the rules before I would be able to use it, add another one. Now, how you remove a rule, if I didn't want one of these rules here anymore, I think I have to turn it off. And then what I just actually did, so, oops, sorry. I'm going back to automate, rules, and manage. So what I have to do is I can actually have it still on, but what I need to do to be able to delete it, you would think you could delete it from this screen, but you have to actually click on the rule. And then once the rule is open, then you can click the delete choice in the bottom left, and then now it's gone. So I can delete both of these just by clicking on the rule and then clicking the delete rule option again. And then I just have to close this screen. And then when I want to go back to Microsoft Teams, I can just close the SharePoint up here at the top. I'm just clicking the close button, and there I'm back in my my list. So again, if automate does not show here, which it may depending on how things are set up for you, you just have to go in here and choose open in SharePoint. And that again takes you back. And then now you'll see automate is available. Okay, so we have a little bit of time. It's just I see it's 11:41 my time, so we've got about 15 minutes. Are there any questions at this point? Katie, are you there? Okay, so I'm just looking in the chat panel and I don't see any questions. So if anyone wants a question answered, you can just type in the chat panel and let me know if there's anything you want me to review or if you've got any questions about anything else.
Hi, Lori. I'm not seeing any questions, just a lot of people saying thank you. Looks very cool, very informative, and lots of thank yous.
Okay, excellent. Okay, cool. All right. Well, as I said, I will update the handout to include what I showed you there about the date formatting, and I'll send that to Terry and Katie, and they will send out an updated handout for you. And otherwise, thank you for
Wonderful.
attending
Thank you so
today's session.
much.
Right. Thank you.
And good luck with the snow.
Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you all.
Bye.